Alright, what's up guys? In today's video, we will be discussing how I maintained all of my muscle while running 70 miles per week. So to give you guys some quick background about me, I run anywhere from 60 to 80 miles a week. I've been running for about 15 years and bodybuilding for 8. I've been doing both concurrently for 8 years, and I've, over the past 8 years, pretty much almost mastered how to do both concurrently while gaining muscle or maintaining muscle, certainly without losing muscle. And here's how I did it while training for a marathon. All right, step one, I ate at or above maintenance calories. So how I found my maintenance calories was I went on Google and I searched TD and I did a Google search TDEE calculator. And the TDEE calculator, it's just a calculator that tells you your maintenance calories. So what you do is you go on that website, you go to the calculator, you enter in the information, and once you do that, it'll spit out your maintenance calories, okay? Now, your maintenance calories is based on your activity level, so how much you exercise, and more importantly, how many steps you take throughout the day. So if you work at an office job or versus, if you're in construction or landscaping, uh, basically if you sit a lot or if you walk a lot, your activity level is going to vary. All right. So that's how it tells you your maintenance calories. Now, one thing I will say, depending on how much exercise you do, your maintenance calories might not be accurate. So for example, it was saying my maintenance calories were like 3,500 calories, when in reality, I was doing so much cardio that my maintenance calories were really closer to 4,600. My maintenance calories were higher than what was recommended for a professional athlete, because there's a professional athlete on the TDE calculator because of people exercise, because I was exercising so much, lifting heavy an hour and a half a day while running 10 miles a day on average for 7 days a week. So this is going to require some trial and error. If you're eating at the recommended maintenance calories and you notice you're losing weight, that means you're going to want to increase the calories. Increase the calories by a couple of hundred weight and see if you're maintaining. If you start gaining, lower. If you start losing, increase. So it really requires trial and error, but the TDE calculator is a good baseline. I started that and what I would recommend everyone to start at. Step two, and this is the most important. This is extremely important. I always lifted weights before running. Again, I've been doing this for 8 years, okay? I've been running and bodybuilding concurrently for 8 years. I run a 16:51 5K and a 4:52 mile as a bodybuilder, so I can attest to this. I don't know what the science is, but there's something about lifting. There's something about running before lifting that makes your lift extremely weak, okay? And in order to maintain muscle, you're going to want to maintain strength or even gain strength. But so if you run before you lift, your lift is going to be totally botched, okay? You're going to be a lot weaker. Even if you properly refuel with caffeine, carbohydrates, and protein 12 hours after your run. So let's say you run at 7 a.m., 10 miles, you lift at 7 p.m. Even if you eat 3,000 calories in between that, I don't know what the science is, but your lift is still going to suffer. So always lift before you run, no matter what. Again, the inverse, when you run before you lift, it probably has something to do with glycogen. Again, I'm not a scientist, but it makes your lift substantially worse. I'm not saying you can't push the same amount of weight, but it makes pushing that same amount of weight much harder. You're going to have to use much more energy than you would if you lifted before you ran. Trust. All right, step three. This is important too. I ate a minimum of 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. Okay, so you're running more, so you're burning more calories, which means you're going to need more protein because you're running, and running is the opposite of anabolic, it's catabolic. So you burn fat and muscle when you run. So in order to compensate for that fat and muscle loss, you're going to want to eat more protein. So if you weigh 300 pounds, you're going to eat 250 grams of protein, as opposed to, or excuse me, if you weigh 200 pounds, you're going to eat 250 grams of protein, as opposed to eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, which would be 200. All right, step four, always stay on top of hydration. So there's a lot of science on this, and I can attest to this based on personal experience. Being dehydrated greatly affects your performance, both in lifting and in running. In my experience, it affects your performance more in lifting, and there's science, there's literature to back this up. The science says that even if you're like 10, even if you're slightly dehydrated, that can affect your strength by 10%. Well, if you're bench pressing 300 pounds, if your max is 300 and you're slightly dehydrated and your 1 rep max, it goes from 300 to 270. So there's a huge difference from being at 270 bench to 300-pound bench, and that's simply because of hydration. So I'd recommend drinking a lot of water. I wouldn't just drink to satiate yourself. I would drink excess just so you can stay on top of your strength. Okay, this is very important. Step 5, always got adequate sleep. Um, of course, with being a working professional, an adult, um, we all have responsibilities, so you might not be able to always get adequate sleep. That's not you know realistic for a lot of people. But if you can, I'd recommend shooting for 7 hours. I'd recommend prioritizing sleep. Sleep's very important. If you do both without getting adequate sleep, you will start getting fatigued, and you will notice your lift starting to fatigue, or regress rather in the gym. So sleep is very, very, very important. Yeah, and so pretty much, if you follow all of these steps, you will maintain muscle while running high mileage. And that's all I've got for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up and a like. I offer one-on-one coaching, how to become a hybrid athlete, how to get better at running, how to bodybuild and run concurrently, how to get shredded, how to build muscle. All I do it all. So if you're interested, click on the link below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.